One thing queer, one thing queer, one thing queer. Let's get one thing queer. Let's get one thing queer.
Hello and welcome to One Thing Queer. My name is Jenny Witton and my pronouns are she, they.
And I'm Kelsey Wren and my pronouns are she, her.
Hello.
Hey.
How are ya?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Have our coffee. What do you have for your H2O?
I have water now. I just downed my coffee before we came.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get to your level, so don't mind me.
My coffee level.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a busy day, so I needed I don't know. I anticipate needing the coffee later.
Yeah.
So I was like, let me just do it now so I might be jumpy.
Yeah.
right now.
I don't know. You don't seem jumpy at all.
Okay, cool. Well, that makes me scared that I need more than if it didn't even kick in.
I think it's better though, because then you can ease your way in, or if it hits you all at once, you know, it's not so overwhelming.
Gonna be twitchy pretty soon.
Yeah. I'm gonna be looking over at you and you're gonna be like, your eyes are gonna be all twitching.
Eye. You ever get so stressed out that your eye starts to twitch?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. It was twitching earlier today and I was like, ooh, you are. That's why we were talking about doing something later and I was like, I can't, I'm so stressed out.
Oh, stress kills.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Not even stressed because I don't know. I'm cool. I know I can get it done. As long as I can tell myself I can get it done. My partner has a lot to do today too. So we were kind of this morning have a great day. You can do it. We got this. We were both super supportive. You got it. And cool, thanks. I got it. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
We joke that our catchphrase we like to say is we're doers.
Yeah.
Look at us go. We're doing. We're doers.
Exactly. I'm a doer. Wait, where's that from?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Maybe I'm making it
It's
up.
probably from something, but we just, I don't know.
I'm a doer.
Yeah. Sounds like you came from something.
Okay, the caffeine's kicking in.
There it is.
So today what are we talking about?
I think we're going to kind of extend from last week or attach on. I don't know what I'm trying to say. From last week, we kind of had an intro to a little bit of gender stuff last week, and I think we want to elaborate on that more. Mm-hmm. But first, we should
show the shit.
Yeah. How was your week?
It was a good week. I actually don't work for the rest of the month, but I've still been busy with family stuff, and we celebrated Thanksgiving. My sister likes to spend Thanksgiving with her family that she created. Mm-hmm.
Wow, what a jerk. I'm just kidding.
So we celebrated on Sunday, I want to say, and then I think I've just been doing stuff with my dad. But this week, what stood out to me was we haven't talked about this. But
I think I know what it is already.
We haven't talked about this, and I didn't want to bring it up until the episode, but I started my 5th Instagram account.
I saw it, and I was a little bit what? How much? I think you have more time than you do.
I don't know what I'm.
It's great so far, though.
It's my Aries. I just found that I don't really. I think secretly I care about what people think, but I think on the surface I'm I don't give a fuck. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to annoy people on my personal page with a bunch of spiritual shit, because sometimes I'm all I want to do is just post spiritual shit.
Yeah.
And some people are oh, this one crazy person, which I don't care about. But I also don't like to be that annoying person. Mm-hmm. So I was okay, I need to create an account for myself to kind of just document my growth in learning about my spiritual gifts and my spiritual abilities, if you will. And I really have picked up tarot again. And when I first started my awakening, I bought my first tarot deck and I love it so much. It's a really cute, it's called Modern Witch. And it's LGBTQ, beautiful illustrations. It smells divine. I love the smell of paper. It's like a book, basically. And I have such a bond with that tarot deck. And I don't know. It just I feel I'm going through another mini awakening right now. Mm-hmm. And I was okay, I need to start something. And so, yeah, I decided to start an Instagram account where I could eventually like do meditations. Oh my God, I just saw the number. It was 444. And eventually do like guided meditations. I'd love to like learn how to guide through meditations because I found like people like you and stuff like, you know, have trouble with that. And I want to just, I don't know, dabble more into be in touch more with like that aspect of my spiritual awakening. So.
Love it.
So yeah, that happened. So if y'all want to follow me, it's a very like
I love it. It's really cool. I was like, ooh, look at Jenny is killer with branding.
I'm owning my power. It's called Celestial Light Witch, which I was kind of battling. Like, it's funny because it kind of goes into this topic of this episode, but I was kind of battling. I'm like, should I put witch or wizard? Because I was like looking into like the gender neutral term for, you know, what we know as a witch. And wizard is gender neutral. But there's something about me wanting to be, I know I have a lot more divine feminine energy internally. So I think that's just kind of me owning my power. And that's why I decided to use witch. But yeah.
It was good. I was like, that's another one. And I was like, okay, like when you were posting, I was like, yes, like this is what I want to, I mean, I've followed so many new pages in the last month, I guess. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm give me all the info that I possibly could have. And like, I'm awesome. It's great.
Thank you.
I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. I'm excited too. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know. We'll see what happens with it.
But. If anything, it's somewhere you can, it's like a, I mean, if anything, what can it hurt? It's something for you. And it's like a journal almost kind of. Like, I love that. Like,
yeah. And I really want to help. Like, there's so many people that, like, you know, like to talk about this topic. And so I'm like, I won't be annoying. Like, all our podcast listeners are like following me on my personal page. I'm like, I don't want to be like, we already talk about it so much that I'm like, I don't want to be I don't want to be bombarding people with it. So yeah, I just kind of want to do like little drawing a card a day to see if it resonates with people.
Love it.
So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's it.
How exciting.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, how do you have
I don't know.
I do a quarter of what you do and I'm like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm so tired.
I know. I don't know what I'm doing, but it was my impulsiveness. I'm an Aries.
Love it.
And a tarot deck that I just ordered is on its way. Oh. That's what that notification is.
Thank you, universe.
Thank you, universe, for the confirmation. Anyways, how was your week?
It was good. It was just busy. I mean, I really was trying to figure out what to say right now, and like, it's a blur. It was busy. I was tired. Work is kind of ramping up, so my days are more filled than usual. And I don't know, usually around the holidays, my partner and I get kind of like overwhelmed with the amount of like things that are going on because we are really, I mean, we are really big home buddies. Yeah. And like it's a lot of energy for both of us to go out and interact for both of us.
Yeah. Like, you're very social recently.
Yeah. I was actually joking. So, that's what I did is Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
Saturday or Friday? Oh,
I think it was Saturday.
Okay, Saturday I went to the night walk.
How was it?
It was cool. It was really cool. It was a cool little space. Candace's booth was there.
Oh my
Drunken
gosh.
Unicorn Apothecary. It was, her setup is like, I mean, I'm going to talk about her again for like the third episode in a row.
Oh my gosh. We love you, Candace.
We do. And like her setup was so cute. Everything I love. Okay, I'm a sucker for like huge, good branding. Like everything is cute, matches, like, you know, logos. Like I love that stuff. And everything was like cute. The table was cute. Like people looked really interested. They had like all kinds of different vendors there. It was really cool, and it was cool to see people and like interact. But like I think that's why I was so exhausted the next day is because I mean for me staying out late is like 11 and I was out late, so but it was really cool and really fun.
I'm jelly.
You should have gone.
Speaking of Candace, I started I watched more of I haven't like completely finished it, but I watched the rest of her class, her crystal class. Oh my gosh.
Right?
I loved it so much.
Right?
I'm so excited for the next. So if you haven't subscribed to Candace's Patreon, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, it was great.
It's so amazing.
If you're even a little bit interested in any of this stuff or crystals or anything, it was like, I mean, I was like, I'm not just saying stuff, Candace. Like, I was messaging her. I was like, I'm serious. Like, I'm like, it was really good.
Same.
Yeah. I took notes and everything.
Me
like,
too.
I put them in my little book that I have.
Me too. I was taking notes. Like,
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting
It
and
really is.
and a very knowledgeable. You're very knowledgeable, Candace, and I just immensely respect and admire you for just like being yourself. She's so genuinely herself, and I think that's what's most inspiring. And she's really just here to help everybody, you know, just kind of find their own way. And I love that she doesn't force things. And
Yeah.
anyways,
Exactly. But it
not
was
sponsored by Drunken Unicorn Apothecary.
You got it.
I got it.
It was just really cool also to see her like in her element, because like there was a post I saw that was kind of like, I'm really into seeing lately like people putting like what's in their brain in real life.
Yeah.
Like almost every single one of my friends, I can see what's in your brain when you do this in real life. Like, just to see her in her element, like
in person,
in person, talking and stuff. Like, I was just like, oh, I'm like so proud of you.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I felt too.
Yeah, I was like, this is really cool. Like, you had an idea, you went for it. I love that. Like, that kind of stuff is really inspiring. You took the leap. Like, even with my partner, with like his bar in the garage, that was in his head, and it's in our garage now. Like, that is wild to me. I love that.
It was a dream, and now it's tangible.
Yeah, it makes me like, okay, gotta get onto some stuff.
I mean, we are.
We are. You're right. I don't know. I'm gonna.
I already feel it.
Yeah,
I already feel it, y'all. We're almost at 1,000 listens. What? Overall. Yeah, we're at 900 and something.
Nice.
So we're almost at 1,000 plays, which is awesome. Crazy.
I know. We were. Oh my gosh! I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
So okay, we went to go. We went to go like computer shopping for my partner, and we were looking at that, and we could see the like on the MacBooks the Apple icon for the podcast.
Yeah.
And he started like, he was like, type it in, and I was like, okay. So I was typing in like one thing queer, and I was like, oh my, like it's at like Best Buy. Like, you can like my face is on the computer at Best Buy. Like, our faces, like, it was the trippiest. Him and I are looking at each other like, whoa. It was the coolest.
We're famous.
It was the coolest thing though. Yeah. I was like, dude, like,
did you leave it open so whoever?
Oh, I sure did.
Whoever came across it, they're like, one thing clear.
Yeah, I sure did leave it up there.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I was like,
we should roam around Best Buys and just do that. We're gonna be on the news. Yeah. They're gonna be like, these two individuals keep coming to Best Buys and opening this page up called One Thing Queer.
Yeah, yeah. I love it.
I'm so down. Let's make a day out of it.
Oh man. I love that, like, I could even see, like, with the podcast they suggest underneath, and it was My Favorite Murder, and I was like, what? Like,
that's crazy.
In association with? Like, that's pretty cool.
I mean, let's rub elbows with My Favorite Murder.
Right? Like,
we own merch from My Favorite... Well,
oh, you do?
Val. Yeah. It's all Val's merch. That's, like, one of her favorite.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh.
Love that.
Manifesting.
Oh, I have their book somewhere. Oh, no, I have the audio version, but I have the book.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, cool.
Cool.
That was all that to say. That was my weekend.
Yeah, that was our shooting the sheets.
Yeah, sheets. I love it.
The two shits.
Yeah.
Shooting our anyways.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. So on that note,
yeah,
let's talk about our gender identities.
I guess. Yeah. It's so I guess first things first. So we have attempted this episode before. And I think, so we, honestly, I feel like we both didn't like it because we sounded confused and not really aware of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
I think in the beginning, like, the confusion is that we are talking in terms of how we'd like to see the future. And that's not exactly the reality just yet. So we have to use terms that are identifiable right now so people understand. But I just want people to know that if it sounds confusing, it's because we're trying to mold two realities to each other of what we want to see. I mean, the goal is to not have to come out, to not have to have any labels, to not like it's in the it's something that Tatchi says in the podcast we're going to talk about.
Yes,
that like the goal is to not have to identify anything because everybody is just who they are, and there's no bigotry at all to have to deal with. Like you don't have to know you can just know people.
Exactly,
that's the goal. So I think, in my eyes, that's the goal. So I think when we talk about masculine and feminine, those types of things, that we have to, that's the reality we are in now. We have to label it so people understand what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's like the easiest way for us to be able to really explain this topic.
Yes.
Because we have had listeners that have questions about, me and how my gender identity is. And honestly, like, I'm really happy we're having this conversation because I feel like a lot of people are kind of in the same boat as me as far as like the limbo of, what exact terms and how to really express who we are, so I'm really excited, and I'm excited that like we have so many commonalities, you and I, but you still identify as she, her, and that's okay, and that's like the whole point. That's the whole point.
Sorry.
No, yeah.
And that's something that I kind of wanted to touch on from last week. I was talking about like the like being pushed to the masculine side and things like that. And like for me, I think a lot of the differences, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of the differences that I want to still be seen as she, her. I want that. That's what I feel like I am, and I want that. And it's even though we think the same things, that's not what you want.
Exactly.
And I think that's the difference. And that's all it is. It's what you want. The labels, we can get into the podcast that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to refer to this podcast.
Yeah, basically
podcast episode.
I think it's Tatchi. What they say is that that the labels are more for other people, so they can identify. But again, we would like for it to not be labels. And I think labels also put us in a box when sometimes a lot of things are fluid. Like it's not always like, just because I said I'm this, I mean, I say I'm she, her now, I don't know what the future holds for me or how I'm going to change my mind or anything. And that's just it. It matters what I think about myself, and it matters, for you, how you think about yourself.
And it's ever changing.
Yeah.
And I think it's like normalizing the whole idea of it forever, ever changing.
Definitely.
Some people will know for the rest of their life, and sometimes people don't, and that's okay. And that's where we need to break that stigma and like the hate that people get for, not even changing their mind necessarily, but just not really identifying as that person. It's like Cammie, this episode's from Cammie Scott's podcast called Uneducated. Cammie said, I used to be a figure skater when I was younger.
I was totally going to bring that up. It resonated. Yeah. I used to be a figure skater for years. I would never call myself a figure skater now.
Exactly. So it's the same concept.
Yeah. So same thing. I used to play soccer. I would never call myself a soccer player now. Like that's something the book too. I mentioned a book last week. It's called Ask a Queer Chick: A Guide to Sex, Love, and Life for Girls Who Dig Girls. It's by Lindsay King Miller. It's the book that Jesse gifted me.
Yeah.
And she actually says something in here too that like part of coming out, like just because a lot of people, she used to run a column that was like a ask a queer chick basically.
Yeah.
And they would say like, oh, I came out as this, can I be this now? And it's like, well, yeah, like if something else more defines you or something else resonates more with you, then yeah, you're that now. Like it's really like, because a lot of queer people, a lot of lesbian women come out as bi first.
Yep.
Because it's kind of that's what the book writer did that too.
Yeah.
And then she's like, no, wait, like I'm a lesbian, like, like, so it can change. It can change.
For
and
sure.
I feel like the point is something Tatchi says too, is the point is to like get to know the person and go from there. Like, if you know the person, these labels don't matter. Like,
exactly.
It's, like, it doesn't matter because it is, that's just who they are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the topic for today.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited. Yeah. I think I'm ready.
Yeah. I think now we have a better, because last time we tried to go through like a bunch of different like terms and stuff.
But there's so many terms out there. So.
And honestly, I feel like if you don't know the term, please reach out and we can help as much as possible. But also like, you can also Google stuff.
Yeah.
Like we had mentioned I joked about last week it not being like cis thoughts. Mm-hmm. Like if cis is like you are the gender, or I guess you identify as the gender that your sex is, that you're born with, basically. Because sex and gender are different. Let's get that right. So yeah, that's what cis is basically. So like, like I know that my thoughts are a little bit different than that.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, yeah. Welcome. But I don't know. Yeah. Do we want to start off with points from that? So it was again the Cammie Scott podcast,
Uneducated.
And she's doing an interview with
Tatchi. And we will link everything in the description notes for this episode. Mm-hmm. So if you are curious to know who we're talking about, or you want to check out the episode, it's a really great episode.
I was just gonna be like, it was really good.
Yeah, so go check it out. Mm-hmm. So I had a list. I listened to it again this morning, but we mentioned this earlier. One of the points was Tatchi was saying you don't need to go from one box to another. Mm-hmm. So they're gender fluid. So what that means is basically they're okay with every pronoun, but they were mentioning that they do prefer they. Mm-hmm. And when they do hear he, him, they feel a little like bubbly inside because it never happens. And something that resonated with me was they basically said like they're okay with she, her, but they're okay with she, her for other people. Mm-hmm. And they're also like used to that. And that's something that I resonate with, because in discovering my sexuality, the topic of gender kind of came afloat. And I was like, okay, well, I feel like I don't have to hide anything anymore. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be comfortable with my throat chakras closing up. As you can tell, this is like a little hard for me to talk about, but it's necessary. And I definitely want to talk about it because it's just been weighing on me, and I think this is definitely a lot harder for me to talk about than when I came out. I think coming out with being non-binary has been a lot harder. Mm-hmm. But anyways, going back to that, they basically said they're scared of letting go of she, her, because they're scared that they're always going to be misgendered. Mm-hmm. And I think, I go by she, they. And one of the biggest reasons I'm holding on to it is because of that, is because I know that if I go by they, them completely, I will still always be misgendered, like in my family. Like there's just like a lot of different things that I feel like will come afloat that I really don't want to be invalidated. Yeah. And I was already kind of invalidated when coming out, and I'm like, that was so tender. Like that was like not that long ago, and I don't want to have to go through that again. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big reason. I think another reason I do hold on to she, her still is because it's what I know. And I also, like I said earlier in this episode, that I'm so in touch with my divine feminine energy internally that, internally, even though I do feel non-binary, there's still a part of me that embraces my womanhood. And I love that I'm AFAB. I'm really happy that I was born, female at birth. So another point that I pointed out, another point that stood out to me was that terms are helpful, but they can ever change. And that's something we also kind of went on is, like you said, when I first came out with my sexual orientation, I came out as bi because I was in a hetero relationship. And I think that's typically a very common stepping stone for a lot of lesbian people out there. So I think it kind of creates like the safe space. But I remember even like coming out as bi and feeling like this isn't my flag. You know, I would like look at the colors. And I actually went painting with my friend Melissa at a park, and we were painting, and she painted like the lesbian flag. And I was like doing a painting with like the bi flag colors, and just like that in itself, I remember that moment, and I'm like, that's not me. Yeah. Like, this isn't me. Like, I'm that flag. Yeah. Like, and I knew that deep down. But it's also like, it's very scary coming out, you know, like going from like only dating men to completely like just dating women. People are like, what? Like, how can you be gay? So I felt like I had to do that like transition of like, oh, I'm bi.
That's something that the book kind of touches on, where like people always want proof, and it's kind of like, well, that's none of your business, one, and two, like just because I've only dated men doesn't mean that's what's in my head. Like,
exactly,
there's a you know, there's a societal pressure that's what you're supposed to do, and we've talked about that before. Like, it's a pressure. Like, I think people don't realize how hard it is to go against that pressure. And like, because if you're straight, like, you've never had to deal with that. Like, that's kind of something that Tatchi was talking about, that like people always joke that like you make queer your personality, and it's like, well, no one says that about straight people.
Exactly.
Like, you make straight your personality.
I know so many straight people that make it their personality.
And it's like, I mean, you know, like it's you know, like, nobody says that, you know, like, I it's kind of like, and it's something else that they said, that like, that in regards to that, like, the queerness is so much more about who I am versus who I'm interested in, you know?
That's how I feel.
I love that, like, because it's like I get the same thing with, like, I identify as she, her, and bisexual. I've said before, the binary for me is people not like me and people like me. And like, but none of that, like, that doesn't, like, because I'm with a man doesn't make it any less, you know, I am who I am.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, if whoever my partner is doesn't define who I am. And I really don't like the idea of like another person defining who you are. When you know, you're the only one that knows what's in your head.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
I think something Tatchi says too, you probably have it in your notes, that like, to touch on that same thing, is that like the labels we use are for other people to understand us. It's not for us understanding us.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what I was trying to get across earlier when we were talking about like the goal is to not have labels, kind of. So I think that's, again, the labels are for other people to understand you, not for you to understand yourself.
Definitely. Yeah, I definitely relate to that, because I mentioned it before. Like, I feel like there's many times where I'm like, I don't want to be classified as a man, and I also don't want to be classified as female or masculine or feminine. But those are the only two words we really have to describe, you know? Like, there'll be some days where I don't know how I'm going to feel and how I want to express myself. And I, wake up some days and I just want, I know the wind's like going crazy.
It's windy again here.
But like, yeah, there'll be days where just like, I want to dress, I call it neutral. Yeah. Like it's pants and a crew neck, like women wear that and men wear that. Like, to me, that's neutral. And there'll be some days where I kind of want to put on makeup and some days I don't, or some days I kind of like do both. But yeah, I think
I see that with you though. Like, I think that's why we make the effort to add in the they them, because I know, I mean, for one it's respectful, and let's be real, Tatchi said something like touched on this as well, that like using proper pronouns is suicide prevention.
Oh, 100%.
Like, it's like, it helps people. It's maybe something little to you, but like, it saves lives to correctly identify, like, correctly use pronouns that are correct pronouns. Like, it's, because I hate to say it, but like, as like kind of an empath, like, I can feel the little death.
Oh yeah.
In like when somebody is misgendered or like the wrong pronouns are being used, like, I can feel that. I can feel like the body language that has to do with other people. Like, and
it sadly happens a lot in the transgender community, and that's that's like Jesse spoke on this. The statistics for the suicide rate in the trans community is insane and so incredibly sad how high it is. So just keep that in mind. You know, if there's something that you don't understand, it never hurts anyone if you just ask people their pronouns.
That, and really, it's not for you to understand. You don't need to understand anything when someone says, hey, my pronouns are this. You don't need to understand anything about that. You just say, okay, I will try this. And when you make a mistake, you apologize, or, you know, and you don't keep making the same mistake. Plenty of people have no problem being like, oh, my dog is this. Oh, oops, it's a girl. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I called it a boy. Like, people have no problem doing that with dogs. Like, I don't understand. Like, there can't be more respect for humans. Like, I don't really care if you understand it or not. It's not for us to understand. I don't fully understand it. It's not my life. But that doesn't mean I have any less respect for you. It doesn't mean that's just not in my head what my world is, you know? But I mean, I get it, but it's like, I don't need to know. I just need, what are your pronouns? And that's that. Like,
exactly. And to touch on that, they also mentioned that it should become a norm to when you meet somebody new to say, you're like, hey, my name is Jenny. I go by she, they. What are your pronouns? That can make a world of a difference. I actually told you about this, but I was assisting a makeup artist, and she was telling me that one time she encountered someone saying, like, referring to her as they, them, because they didn't know, like, what her pronouns were. Or no, I'm sorry. They asked her what her pronouns were. They just asked her. And she's like, well, isn't it obvious? And and she told me that. She's like, I didn't understand. I even like took offense to it. And she's like, do I look like anything else? And I did mention it to her. I'm like, well, sometimes people, like, I mean, I was talking about me. Yeah. I'm like, sometimes people, like, you can't tell. Yeah. Like, there's many, like, I really haven't encountered many people referring to me as the proper, you know, pronoun. You know, pretty much all the time it's like, hey, ma'am, hey, miss, you know.
That was something too when you say she, they, like, people, you could cut this out if you want. No. That's something you were saying with, like, she, they, is that, like, people need to use the they more. Like, you know, and if it is, I understand how when it's new to you, it can be confusing to work it into a sentence. Here is an easy way. Yeah. If you don't know, you can just say their name. Like, you can, you know, it's, I know a lot of people have an issue with the singular and plural thing, but for one, we use they as a singular all the time anyways. If you were to say, just a quick little example, everybody, that I heard, if you were to say, oh, hey, my boss told me I don't have to come into work tomorrow, you would say, oh, that's cool. What did they say? You're talking about one person.
It's like, that simple.
It's really that simple. I mean, I try my hardest, and I know that I get tripped up in a sentence, in the structure of the sentence when I'm trying to talk. Yeah. But in that case, I just say Jenny. Like, you can just say people's names also.
And I feel like for the most part, like, I misgender myself more than you misgender me, because there'll be times where I'll catch myself, like, it really irks me when people that I'm not close with refer to me as, like, hey girl. Yeah. I'm like, who's that? Yeah. Like, that's not me. I'm not a hey girl for you. Like, especially I don't know you like that. So maybe you should ask me for my pronouns, and then my little feistiness comes in internally. I haven't grown the ovaries to like I haven't corrected people.
I think also it's you. You also want to, I don't know. I also think that a lot of times this stuff doesn't come across if you're rude about it. Yeah. It's obvious. So you don't want to do that, I think.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah. No, I think it's like internally, like my I don't know.
Well, that's why even, oh, sorry, go ahead. No. Well, that's why I was like, I was joking. Like, I think I told you off air, a couple weeks ago that I was trying to, like, I paused before I said TikTok person of the world, because I was like, I don't want to say queen. I don't want to say king. So I'm going to say, like, and then when I messaged you the other day, I was like, well, you're the legend, like, because you're a TikTok legend. So, like, that's why I was like, I'm trying to, like, make the effort. But again, everybody, you can just say that person's name. Yeah. Like, I think that is most, and also the introducing with pronouns, it's like you said, not everybody is obvious, and even if they are obvious, you know, they would go by woman or man.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that's what they go by. Like, I've seen a lot of like TikToks where people like will ask people on their lives like, oh, what are your pronouns? And they're like, I don't do that. Like
yeah, it's like, okay, so you don't exist.
Yes, like, or like they get offended because they assume that you can't it's mostly, I mean, let's be real, on the lives it's mostly men.
It's always
like,
just men.
Yeah, so they get offended that you would think they're anything but a man. Like, it's like, dude, like, you can just, even if you don't like that question, like, you can just be like, oh, he, him, later. Like, you still have pronouns as a cis male or a cisgender, even cisgendered. Like, you identify everything with what your sexual organs are. You can still have pronouns.
I know.
It's really,
it's really funny, but yeah, it's just one.
I was gonna say, like, another example of like they them. Like, if you get cut off in traffic, you'd be like, "Hey, they cut me off." It's one person in that car. Just another example of it being that simple. Like,
and nobody expects everybody to get it instantly.
Agreed.
Like, just practice in your everyday life. Refer to people like you don't know their gender. That's as simple as that. Everybody really, and they talked about it on the episode, everybody is a they. When you really think about it. You know, like, there'll be times where people don't know your gender and like they refer to you as they, and it's literally that simple. And
that too. And even with my partner, when we talk about it, because I was telling him how you identify, and I was saying, okay, and I know that it gets confusing with him when I'm saying, I'm talking about you and I'm saying they. I know that it gets confusing. I understand that. So what we do is I'm like, okay, I'm talking about Jenny. And then we start the story. Or like, this is what we did today kind of thing. And then if in your own personal relationships, if you need to do that too, because I know, like, yeah, you go by she, they, and so him saying she is okay.
Yeah.
But there are going to be people that we have guests that or strongly identify as they, them, and I wouldn't even, you know, I know he would be apologetic if a mistake was made. Yeah. But I don't want to, you know, I don't want to have to make that a mistake. To me, I care about getting it right, and I think a lot of people don't care when they should. Like, it's. Again, it's suicide prevention. It's a minuscule thing that you can do that will mean a lot for somebody else. And I just don't understand the not wanting to do that for another human being. I don't get that. That's
something Tatchi said was basically, I don't care what you refer to me as long as you do it in a loving way and a loving and accepting way. And they go by all pronouns, but they prefer, even they said, like, I prefer they, them, because it's easy and it's what feels right. And that's how I feel. And I know it's hard, especially for people that have known me my whole life or most of my life. I know it's hard. And, you know, there are people that I haven't come out to face as non-binary. And to be honest with you, like, I didn't know about it until a few years ago. I didn't really understand it until I came out. I decided to really nurture and kind of look into who I was. And because I wasn't trying to put this facade of femininity in covering my sexual orientation, and that's kind of how it intercollided, was, oh, okay, like, I came out so I could be myself. So then I figured out who I was, and I identified more as non-binary because I enjoy, like, embracing, if you will, lack of a better word, my masculine side and my feminine side. Like, it's a little bit of both and it's a little bit of neither. Yeah. You know, and that to me is my happy place. That is my comfort level. And there was a time where I was doing a job recently. It was about a month ago. And the actor, I don't know how it came about, but I was basically just telling them that, like, sometimes I'm like, I'm more than just a woman, or sometimes, like, I don't even feel like a woman or a man. And they asked me, like, oh, what are your pronouns? And I told them she, they, but I consider myself non-binary. And he's like, he's like, I had a little feeling, and honestly, and he's like, and I respect that. And like, I'm sorry if I misgendered you, because it was like a couple of day shoot. And I was like, oh, it's okay. And that's the point. It's like, if you mess up, It's okay. Instead of saying sorry, if somebody corrects you, instead of saying sorry, say thank you, because they're doing you a favor. If somebody apologizes, I mean, it depends on the person. You don't know what like is going through their head, but if you say I'm sorry, you make them feel a little weird.
It makes them feel like they did something wrong.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the internal battle I deal with like, you know, holding on to the she her is like, if I'm misgendered, I don't want to like inconvenience someone or make them feel bad for it. So I think like that's a big reason why I still hold on to it. But if I could just be referred to as they them, that'd be great. Yeah. Like, and you heard it here first. You heard it here first, folks. Like that's the reality of it. And I know some of the people I know aren't really going to understand and still don't understand, and it's going to be a battle, and that's okay. Like that's why I'm still holding on to she. But I know eventually, in due time, like that's not going to be the case, and I haven't gotten there yet, where I can release the she her. But when I do, I think I'm like easing my way into it.
When you do, the corrections will happen.
Yeah.
Which you have every right to do. And it's,
Thanks.
I mean, we will be changing the show notes.
Yeah. You'll know.
I kind of to back up a little bit and touch on what you were saying about like wanting to embrace the quote unquote masculine side. I think that's where we differ in our gender identities. Is I don't like embracing it. I feel pushed to that way.
Yeah.
And here's a couple things that I kind of realized after the last episode. So I was listening to another podcast. It's called Romancing the Pod. They talk about like romance movies or whatever and kind of go through them and do trivia and stuff like that. It's really funny.
Yeah.
But there was a woman on there who was talking, and she was talking about how she never embraced the like femininity as a kid because, and this is, I kind of feel the same way, is because the internal misogyny that is put into our heads about women are less than. I grew up in the only other female in the house was my mother, or like a woman in the house was my mother. Yeah. And like I grew up in a male dominated world, like, and to seeing that and seeing like it's put a lot of now that I'm realizing it's put a lot of like misogyny into my head, because to me being woman is less than, because that's not that they were ever blatantly like outright misogynistic, but it's there. It's like it's underlying, and like you can't go outside after this time, you can't play outside, you have to do an inside work with mom, like those kinds of things, like that all says something to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, for me, I always felt like I was doing it wrong, because in my head I was taught it was better to be a boy, so that's where the masculine, but I think that's why I don't like, it's hard for me to express my femininity, because in my brain that's a quote unquote bad thing, which sucks.
Yeah, but I also feel like you are more so than ever embracing that part of you.
Exactly. That's what I was going to get to, is that I feel just like this person was saying or on that podcast, is that she feels like she can express it more because she's out of that environment. And I'm realizing the power in being a woman, and I'm like, ooh, okay, like I have that, like, it's that's why I think I've always had a hard time with it. Like I'm not doing it right or something, like, even though there's not a right way to do it. I'm getting that now, but it's even like family making jokes about like women, like, oh, you don't have makeup on today, like, are you sick? And it's like, no, like, this is my face. Like, or like, just
sorry.
Yeah, I know. Like that's what I grew up with though. And it's like, oh, well, like, okay, so to that put in my head that I have to have makeup on or else I'm not a woman. And me, really, when I look at the core of me, I don't like putting it on all the time. To me, it's a hassle.
And that doesn't make you less of a woman.
Yes, exactly.
You're owning your power.
Exactly. So I'm getting rid of those, and I'm okay with admitting that. That's internal misogyny. We all have it. I'm okay with admitting that that's in my head. Women have been less than. So I hang out with, we had talked about hanging out with boys. I hang out with boys because, for one, I was afraid of being outed. For two, like I mean, you know, those are the girls. Why would you want to hang out with the girls? Like, you know, the boys are cooler. Like, and I've always felt like maybe the other girls in my life could sense that, and hence why they didn't ever include me either, because I didn't want to be on their team, because I was raised to know that the boys' team was better. Like, I'm using these terms because that's what it was when I was a kid, but yeah, it really made me realize something about that is like, oh, like, that's internal misogyny. That's why I hate that when I was a kid, like, but that's the difference between, as I don't like being pushed to the masculine side. I would rather be in my feminine space, but I would rather be in my feminine space who doesn't have to wear makeup, who doesn't have to do quote unquote girly things, like, and real, you know, as we evolve as a society, that's becoming more and more normal. And that's where I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, whew, I love that. I'm still a woman, but I don't have to like look like all the other women. Like, so
you basically like rediscovered your femininity.
Yes, that's kind of it's still a little bit like that's what's happening, but it was just something I wanted to touch on, because it's like it's my life has always been so ingrained with men, and it's like it's now that I'm older, it's actually funny with even my friend group, like it's more women, you know, it's more, you know, women presenting, or they, you know, I have a lot more they them people in my life, and like I'm like, oh, okay, it's not all about like dudes, this is great, like, and I love this, and it's a space that I've never been comfortable in, and I finally feel comfortable in it.
I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I was like, I because I know you like always mention that is like, you know, and we mentioned it in the last episode where you always felt like you were like the masculine around girls, and I'm like, I hope you feel like yourself like when you're around me, because I kind of have that duality. I do, and we actually had talked about this before. I feel very neutral around you, but it's funny because I feel like we get to quote unquote girl out, and we get to like bro dude out. I feel like okay, so like dope. Sing breath. And I love that though, because I don't have to be like also a like shining example of femininity all the like I really don't like having to express that all the time. Like, but you are in your own way.
Yes, I would. You know, I would much rather have it be in my. I admire the hell out of people who can get dressed up and have their makeup on. Like, good for you, you're killing it. I just cannot do that. I don't like to do it. I don't enjoy doing it, and to like, you know, and up until recently, till the last few years, that was a must, and it's not a must for. I'm like, I'm just gonna go out and like, you know, in what I'm wearing. Like, I just really don't care. Like, I don't really care what you think. I'm clean. I showered, and that's all that matters. My hair is combed. That's all. Like, even that, I brushed my teeth, and like, that's it. Just because I don't have makeup on doesn't mean I'm sick.
and when you do decide to wear it's for yourself.
Yes,
that's how I feel too. I'm like, do I want to feel a little more feminine today?
Exactly. Like, we get to like also like girl out. There's no. What's the opposite of bro out?
Gal out.
Yeah, gal out. I guess, I don't know, whatever. But we get to like talking about makeup. Like, I asked you for tips. They are awesome, by the way. Everything is a perfect match.
Yay!
Killed it.
I color matched you online.
I got that stuff, and I was like, dude, this is perfect. It's all dope stuff. Like, I'm in love with it.
I'm so happy.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, you really picked out a color online. I'm like, I see my face every day, and I couldn't do that. So, but like, we get to talk about that, but we also like can like quote unquote bro out. Like, I don't feel like, I think that's a lot of it too, is a lot of us put a lot of pressure on other people to, I don't know, like there's a lot of times, not with my friend group now, but there's a lot of times in the past where like everyone's putting on makeup. Like I said, I learned makeup and things like that from friends. My mom my mom doesn't really like that stuff. She's allergic to pretty much everything. So she doesn't like putting stuff on her face like that. So I learned all that from friends, and it's like, oh, well, like, now I have to do this to hang out with you? Like, oh, this really sucks.
Yeah,
like,
you feel that, like, pressure of, like, I have to look like you. If not, I'm going to be the only, you know.
outcast. Or, like, you know, or, like, like now it's like, oh, like when we go skating or things like that, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, I don't have, nobody cares. Nobody said ever anything like, oh, you're in like t-shirts or you're not wearing makeup. Nobody says anything. And that's awesome.
You're going to be sweating.
Yeah. Well, me too. But like, I totally agree. I don't ever want to wear makeup and wear sweat, and have been sweating. But like some people still wear their makeup and that's fine. Like I've never, I don't say anything either. Do it. I really just, can everyone just let
everybody just be.
Yeah. It's moral of the episode.
People don't live for you, for your convenience.
Yes.
That's the moral of today.
I think that as long as everything is a adult, consensual, all that kind of stuff in, safe spaces, do whatever, please.
Yeah, and I think that's like what the whole talk about gender, like that's the whole point about the talk on gender is respecting people's identities. Yeah. Like that's all it comes down to. And I think that should just be a humane act. Yes. Like you should just be a human being with empathy. Yeah. To the point where you respect what people refer. It has nothing to do with you.
It really doesn't. And even in a respect sense, like I know not a lot of people, but I've seen a lot of people who are like won't respect those, but would lose their shit if you misgendered them. Would lose their absolute shit, and it's like that. Like you get it, you just don't care enough about another person to put it into action. You get it,
like so many things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm double talking here. But
yeah, I'm like that's with like politics and
with everything.
Everything.
Like, you don't tell me you get it because when it's flipped back on you, you're very upset.
Oh yeah,
yeah. But when it's you get it, just it's kind of like we were all taught when we were kids, do unto others, and like no one seems to respect that anymore.
No.
So it's kind of like, certain people don't. So
yeah,
it's I don't know. It's frustrating to be taught that your whole life, or to be kind. And if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Those kinds of things. But like, not everybody is adhering to those same rules.
Yeah,
and you know me in rules.
Yeah, we should.
I agree. Was there anything else in that episode you want to touch on?
I think that was it.
That was my list too.
Yeah, that was my list.
Oh, cool. You already said my figure skater thing.
I did.
That's okay. But I was like, oh, I used to figure skate also. Really cool. Yeah, I was a little bit like, oh, like kind of I don't know. I was like a little bit like, what is this person gonna teach Cammie, basically? But I was like, oh wow, she's really insightful. And I really liked it.
I think the reason I do listen to her is because there's been so many times where she's been called out. So Cammie did an episode with a YouTuber, and their name is Jade Fox, and they have an incredible channel. And Jade Fox had made a video on YouTube about how there was a lot of white creators on YouTube, and that they were pretty much just putting on a show with like supporting Black lives, and not really like following through with the things that they were saying. And they had mentioned Cammie in the episode, and so Cammie had Jade on her podcast, and she's like, let's talk about this, and she like owned up to things and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, like there, she's trying. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is like us trying to accept our privilege. It's us trying to unlearn the internal racism that we all hold. Everybody who has white privilege, including myself as a Mexican, first generation Mexican, I still have a lot of white privilege. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is like owning up. And we were talking about this before, because like we definitely don't want to take up spaces, but we also want to amplify Black voices, because it's already hard enough being queer, let alone like people that have other things that, people that are trans women like literally go through the worst, and so it's just like creating spaces. And I think with our podcast, we really want to try to create spaces not only for our community but also for the Black community. They need to take up the space. Like we are just little vessels that can help do that. And so that's why I listen to Cammie Scott, because she does have a lot of Black creators on her podcast, and I love finding new ones. And it's also important to look up and research Black creators on your own, and because there's so many, and support them.
Yeah, that's what a little bit when I first saw Cammie's thing, and I was a little bit like, do I want to listen to you? Like, I mean,
she's a femme lesbian.
She's not that she's a femme, but like, I mean,
femme white lesbian.
She's a femme white lady. I already know the white perspective, because that's I already know. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, I already know your perspective. I would like to hear other perspectives, and I would like to learn other things and broaden my horizons and my scope of things that I may have never thought of. Obviously, never thought of, because I've never experienced it. So at first I was kind of like, what does she? I was a little surprised you listened to her at first, actually, but like it was really the way that she was respectful to Tatchi was. I was like, oh, okay, like cool, like so. Yeah, I made a preconceived notion, like judgment on her, which I mean, we all have initial judgments on people, and that's the point, is us trying to like stamp those out, basically. Yeah. And even, you know, I had the same thing. We all have those preconceived notions of people, and the point is to be respectful and try to unlearn those. And if you can't unlearn those, to keep an open mind and get to know somebody before you just think these things of them, basically. Oh, absolutely. So that was my bad, is I really thought, I was like, oh no. And then I listened to the episode and I was like, oh, she's great. Like, this was great. Yeah,
and I think what it comes down to, like, one thing that Tatchi did mention to Cammie was the importance of her, like, there's so many queer representations, but they're mainly, like, you know, there's a lot of queer white people, and that's really, like, heavy in our community. And in reality, it's like most of our community is not just white.
Tatchi was talking about representation, and Tatchi was saying that, like, you know, if we only have one certain type of example, you don't know that there's other things out there, or you think you're crazy or weird because you have nobody to relate to. And that's something that's in this book as well, is she actually comes at it from, like, because obviously there's stereotypes of different types of people, different types of queer people, but like she was saying that not all stereotypes in bad, in the sense that they do have some representation. It gives you some representation, kind of, because there's enough of these people doing the same things that you would be like, oh, okay, now I know what that person is, you know? So she kind of took a different angle to it, but like also, like, stereotypes are stereotypes, obviously, but that doesn't mean that all people, I don't like the all thing. That doesn't mean that all people are the same. Yeah. Like, I don't like the all generalization. But yeah, that's definitely what she was saying, is that, like, that's why representation matters. Like, you need to see yourself in media to know. And a lot of people, if you're like, because I'll be honest, years ago, I didn't get it. And because I'm represented everywhere in media, not my bisexualness, but as a white woman, I'm represented everywhere. So I never understood the need, like, when people said that. Yeah. But, like, obviously educating myself, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, it's the same thing where, like, people are like, oh, you make, like, the queerness your identity. Like, well, because you've never had to, like, hide it. You've never had to hide it. You've never had to experience anything different. You're not, like,
you're the norm.
Straight, white people, you're the norm. So that's why you don't get it. Like, it's represented everywhere, so you don't get it. Like, and I didn't get it back then. I was like, I don't understand why people need to see, I didn't get it. Yeah. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't get it. But I get it now. And it matters. And it matters to see yourself. And it whether that came from just coming out or not, if it did, I think it changed. I mean, even if that's the only reason I get it now, I think it's still a perspective that, like, I see that people need that, and it's absolutely obvious, and I think we do. I mean, I kind of thought the same thing about Cammie, where I was like, oh, well, like, I already know what your voice is going to say. I would like to hear other voices. She proved me wrong, but I would still like to hear other voices.
Oh, absolutely. And it just, to go back on, like, the representation thing and our podcast, like, yeah, we are, we are basically like to the naked eye, we're like two white women. But there is a place for you and there is a place for me in our community. As far as like someone's going to relate to you as just simply a woman in a hetero relationship that is and you're bisexual. That in itself has so much value, and someone may identify with me with my gender expression and identity, you know? So we all have a place, but what our point is we need to amplify the spaces that we're taking up and magnify Black voices in the media, Indigenous voices in the media, in our queer community, because they need to take up space. We need to not just have one norm.
Well, that was definitely part of like my hesitation with being on the podcast, and I expressed that too. I think I expressed it on the episode too, is that like I don't want to be I don't want to take up another space. You know I might have a unique perspective with my relationship and who I am, but like I also was really scared of taking up the space because I see that like you don't I would love to keep doing the podcast, but like you don't always need my perspective. My perspective's already out there on a lot of things, you know, but like that's what I was like, I didn't want to come in and be like take over space, and I know that people like me can take spaces over, and they need to be more aware of their surroundings and not always be the one that needs to talk. I get that.
And that's what and on that note, I want to say like we want to have more representation as far as like guests. So if you are a listener and you feel like you need a space, please reach out to us, and we would be more than thrilled and happy to have you on, compensate you in whatever manner you may need, whether it's promotion, whatever it may be. The whole point of this podcast, like we don't make money off of it yet, but the point of the podcast is to magnify voices and for people to come here as a safe space and be able to relate to something. That is the whole purpose of this podcast. So if you are listening and you'd like to be on, please reach out to us. And on that note, I guess we'll say where you can reach out to us. Our email is at onethingqueer@gmail.com. So if you have any questions or would like to be featured on the pod, reach out to us, and we will respect if you would like to be anonymous. And you could do the other socials if you want.
Oh, okay. Or you can reach out, send us a message at One Thing Queer on Instagram. And then my personal one is SpexRayX on Instagram. And
my personal one is at Jenny Lynn Vuitton. And for my witchy listeners, if y'all want to come follow me on my witchy Instagram, it's Celestial Light Witch on Instagram.
And our TikTok is One Thing Queer Podcast.
Just come hang out with us on fun. TikTok. We have so much fun.
It is really fun. And we announced it last week, but we were going to do a live on December 1st, next Wednesday.
Yes.
At 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah, so come join us.
Yeah, on the Instagram. So again, that one is One Thing Queer.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Let us know what you want to talk about. Yeah, I mean, next Wednesday. Actually, for everybody listening on Tuesday, it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. So if you're listening today, make sure you come to our live tomorrow, Wednesday, December 1st at 7 Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah.
So put it in your calendars.
Yes. Yeah.
You're so good at remembering that, because we're like, we don't record the day we upload. So.
I thought about it earlier today. I was like, I need to say that.
Perfect.
It's going to be tomorrow. It's tomorrow, everyone. If you're listening Tuesday, it's tomorrow. Come join us. We'd love to see you. Yes. I think it'll be really fun again. So yeah, definitely.
So I am very happy with this episode. You happy?
Same.
Okay, cool.
I'm open also if anybody, I know this, I always add after after we've closed. If there's anything you want to discuss, we are open ears.
Books.
Please message. I'd love to, if you have questions or if you feel like there's some correction that needs to be made, please don't hesitate
to correct us.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm begging you for it, actually. If there's any correction that needs to be made, don't hesitate.
Yeah. Definitely. We don't take offense.
Yeah.
So
cool.
So yeah, I guess that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode of One Thing Queer. Make sure you come back next Tuesday for a whole new show.
We have some exciting people coming for guests this month.
Yeah, this month.
I don't know what week it is, but this month.
It'll be this month. This month we have some very, very exciting guests. Wink, wink.
Wink, wink.
If y'all have any idea. But all right, we'll talk to y'all next week.
Definitely.
Right.
Bye.
Graphics by BexUniverse.co. Music by Jacody.